that's my Twitter handle. I head up our school partnerships here in the Bay Area. We're a national nonprofit. We partner with public schools, and we train teachers and families on how to use technology better in the classroom and at home, with the goal of serving students' needs. So, and Jonella works with our coach Kendra, and Kendra also works with a bunch of other schools in the Bay Area, and we've been working with Kylie this year. So it's nice to see some familiar faces, and nice to see some new as well. This is who we are. I already said it, so I'll go ahead and skip that. But the real idea behind our nonprofit is that we focus really on that triangle of learning relationships between students, families, and teachers. We think technology should not replace, it should only enhance and strengthen and supplement those relationships. And as a former teacher myself, and from an entire family, all the extended branch of my family are all teachers, I thought it was a great nonprofit that they bring in teachers and bring in family and see them as real assets to technological change in the classroom. So that's why I'm here. If you'd like to go ahead and access our slides today, you can go to this bit.ly link. The capitalization does matter, so it's capital OUSD, lowercase coach. And I was going to start with a do now, but we're a small group, so rather than do the good old paper and Post-its, I'd love it if maybe just 2 or 3 people share out maybe what made your best PD experience great, and or what made your worst PD or workshop experience awful. And I'll give you a few seconds to think on that while I pour the jelly beans in the bowl, and we'll just pepper out a couple ideas. Okay. Do we have some good ideas?
Sure.
I imagine that the first thing that came to mind were all the bad ones, right? Who would like to go ahead and share out? We're a small group, there's 8 of you, so I would love to share one of my worst experiences in PD, which is I had a training on phonemic awareness and kind of phonics in general, and it was just 2 long days with no breaks where they just talked. It could have been delivered via YouTube videos, essentially. So it was no interaction. It didn't build on anyone's, it didn't acknowledge or build upon anyone's knowledge in the room, and it was just something I could have watched at home when I could. So that was something that I did not enjoy. I promise I won't do that to you guys today. What about some good ones or bad ones? What made them good or bad? Brave soul. Or someone without a joke. Yes.
So first year at OUSD and teaching in the DTL position, and I was given the task to teach teachers about OUSD 1 back 4 years ago.
You're bringing people back.
And I had to cover, I have 3 hours, 92 minutes. So I guess
So what made it bad?
I should have learned more about the teachers.
Yeah, okay.
Now I know that the average teaching span teachers at my school is 16 years.
Wow.
So learning that would have helped a lot. Giving them a buy-in or why is this important to you? So always research your audience before you take 3 hours of their time.
That's a good tip. Know who you're talking to, know how they can play a role in what you're about to learn together. Awesome. Any other good experiences? Yeah.
I did a lesson study PD that was like, we returned to the same lesson and standard a bunch of times with a teacher that I already worked well with, and we had like one facilitator who was helping us, one person from the science department who was really knowledgeable, was helping us kind of make it happen. And it was just good because we got to, observe each other and comment on like actual work that we were doing and give each other timely feedback, and then actually use it to like try to make a big improvement in the way we were doing that one particular thing. That was really good. That was also, I only did it once in my whole career, It's not a norm.
You'd be surprised, a lot of teachers who we've done this training with have said lesson studies specifically have been like their one really standout experience because it was ongoing and it was with the same folks. So it was kind of, it had an enduring effect on their practice. So thanks for sharing that. Any other good ones before we head to, yes?
So when we rolled out new CLA at my school, when it was new to everybody, that was a great, I kind of did the training first, and then the rest of the program, but presenting it to the whole staff as new was great. And that was a really easy PD for me to do because it's a very easy program to manage. It was before clever integration.
Yeah.
But then almost my worst experience opposite, teaching it to new teachers, like a small group of new teachers who had to kind of catch up to the old teachers who had been using it for 2 years. That was intimidating for them, and they didn't end up using it as much as the initial learning.
Yeah, that's
It's a
interesting.
learning experience.
And there's a lot of, we could have that up in our tower, because there's a lot of lessons in there that you all could take back to your schools and what you're doing now, which is trying to roll out new technologies with people who are honed in their craft. So, well, thank you for sharing. Today we're going to go ahead and learn about. Today we're going to go ahead and learn about coaching and facilitation for tech leads, and whether or not you have time to coach or observe others and or facilitate PD at your site. I hope that you find something of use today before you walk out of the room. And the whole big goal is to really support teacher leaders at your sites with skills, knowledge, and ideas for technology implementation at your schools. We're going to talk about 4 big ideas today, which is TLC facilitation. You might be wondering, what is that? We made it up, so that's why you don't know what it is. One-on-one support, which is coaching, and working with adults and making it contagious. The whole idea behind this is our work at Power One Learning is that we found change to happen in 2 ways at campuses. One is through one-on-one contact with folks, and one is through group change. So our key takeaways today, if someone could read that first one, I'd be forever grateful.
Focus your energy and work with those teachers who want to work with you.
Yes, that is a lesson we've learned kind of the hard way, which maybe you have yourselves, which sometimes you have to get the early adopters on board before you roll it out to other folks. How about the second and third one? Can someone read those?
Your own biggest advocate.
Yes.
Fail
Fail
forward.
forward. Especially the third one, fail forward. We found that whenever you're rolling out new technologies or new protocols or new habits, being able to lead kind of by example and showing that things sometimes aren't going to work, sometimes they're going to fall flat on their face, you're going to try a new software, it won't work. I think it's really important that you kind of model that behavior. Okay. So we already went through our best and worst PDs.
Oddly enough, every time I roll out a new technology, that's like when the internet fails.
Yeah.
Or like something crashes.
Exactly. You never know. So I would love to know, because we've done this training with a group of folks in SFUSD. We've also done it with a group of facilitators and coaches down in Los Angeles. But I would love to know what roles you all play as a tech lead on your site. And that probably is very different depending on what sort of site you're at, the access to technology you have, and the buy-in from your school leadership. But I'd love to know if you just have a few ideas of like kind of what hats you wear at your campus.
So at my school, I teach in an elementary school. I'm the computer lab teacher for all the kids. I do IT for basic repairs. As the data tech lead, we also do the compile all the data, make assessments, teach teachers how to roll out the assessments. What else is there?
That's a lot.
I'll start with those.
Start with those.
Yeah.
Great. Does anyone have other kind of roles that Janelle didn't share?
Anything with the plug is my responsibility.
My printer is broken.
No, pencil sharpener.
My
I
cell
coffee
phone won't
makers.
charge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it comes to me because it has a plug.
Yeah. Does anyone else have that role they're saying? Yeah. Okay. Are there any other roles that you kind of play that we haven't talked about yet? Yeah.
I'm also coaching 2 after-school clubs, and I also sub everywhere. So,
Okay. So you wear a lot of hats then.
Yeah.
What are the after school clubs?
Girls of Code and robotics.
Awesome. I was a robotics coach back. Symphony, great. Cool. Great. So this is my guess, and I'm guessing maybe you could just kind of nod your head. Do you all roll out new programs or software on your site? Do you help teachers use tech or anything with a plug? Do you organize and catalog tech? If you don't, you're so lucky. If you do, I feel your pain. And the fourth is really spreading information from Kylie's team in the Department of Tech. Do you also do that?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, so good. We have some sort of idea of where we stand. I would love to know kind of where you are at your school site, from a FIST to 5. So FIST is like I'm working entirely on my own and implementing tech. And 5 is I basically have a team of folks assembled, and they're helping me implement change at my campus. And anywhere in between. Okay, I would love to hear your name again.
Dave,
Dave, I'd love to hear what a 3. What's going on at your site?
I would say that I have a group of conspirators, newer teachers who have showed up with an interest in technology and they're willing to implement. And sometimes that means we have to meet after school, we have to do whatever, but it's a way to sort of roll things out because they want it for their kids. They want it, even though there are other people in their grade level even who like sort of frown on the idea or whatever. But it does sort of plant seeds, and it's been pretty successful.
Okay, I bet that probably didn't like happen just overnight, right?
But no.
Anyone who had a fist or a 1, I'd love to hear kind of the other side. Yeah.
So basically it's me. There's another gentleman who's been there volunteering there forever,
Mm-hmm.
but he brings in the new toys for different things he wants to implement.
Okay.
But yeah, but I'm pretty much fielding all the other calls and coordinating everything else between the teachers and students and everything else.
You guys have some serious workload. So that's really helpful because we've been in rooms where people are at 5s, they've got a student mouse squad, and they've got their tech people, and that I will say that's usually the exception. Most people are at a fist or a 1. So nice and exciting to see. Great. So the first idea is really this concept of TLC. You're probably wondering what it is. We just kind of made up this term because people already have professional learning communities at their site. They already have kind of tech squads, or some people are just doing this really organically. It is your group of co-conspirators. It is your group of really eager AV club students. Whatever this is, the whole idea behind starting a TLC or having a group of people is just so you're not going it alone. Because the thing that we've seen is the best plan in the world will get nowhere if one person's doing it. So that's the main idea behind this. And what we've learned from working with folks all across California is these are the best practices we found to make TLCs, or you can name it whatever you want, an apple. But whatever you would like to call this group of people, this community of people working together, this is what we found that works the best. The first is really about focusing your energy and not kind of working with the really tough to change habits just yet. The second would be really about setting norms and trying things out together. Like I said, fail forward, because if you can't encourage honesty, then sometimes our coaches will give a teacher a tool, like, great, run this and tell me how it goes. They check back in with them, and the teacher just kind of wants to say, oh yeah, I did it, it was fine. But they have to have that really strong connection with them, that really strong relationship for them to say, actually, it was a total disaster. It cost me more time. It didn't give me any impactful data, so I'm not going to do it again. So it's really important to have that honesty. And then the last 3 are really about the structure of these groups, which is all about adult learning theory. The people in the room, what I'm doing to you right now, talking at you, is what you should not be doing. You should really be about having people tinker and implement and experiment together during intentional work time. And if you co-create a set agenda, then it's actually kind of on autopilot. You can plug in external experts so that you're not the person constantly having to come up with content. So I would love to know, now that you've kind of heard the overall broad strokes of what a TLC could be, I'd love to know, both ideally and realistically, and let's go ahead and think about next school year. Let's not think about right now, because it's almost spring break and it's a tough time to implement anything new. So let's go ahead and think about imagining for next year and visualizing what it could possibly look like at your school and what you would want it to look and feel like. I'd love for you to turn and talk to whoever's closest to you. And maybe back there could be a group of 3. I don't know. Yes. Yeah, what could this be like at your school?
Well, I think taking that small group and turning it into, there's been a lot of discussion about getting a group of 5th graders who would be available for where does this cord go? So that kind of stuff, crawling under desks, my youth is behind me.
Yeah.
So that would be great, and I think especially getting upper grade teachers as fluent in it as their kids are is really kind of necessary at this point, when kids are carrying around, in their hands, machines that
Stronger than.
yeah, exactly. We're handing them Chromebooks.
Trying
Like,
years
yeah,
past.
I don't want to have
I'll listen.
I think it's really important to get them invested in it so that they feel like they're not
But yeah, quickly.
I think the
holding
biggest
something back.
I know we're working on.
And on the other end, also,
How do you think you can get them? How do you think you can get them on board?
well, I think
What
getting
would
them
that
on
actually
board,
look or feel like?
I think it would feel like saying, you know, there's all of this
This year,
potential out there, and giving them my anecdotal best PD was presenting cooking and having kids like, oh my god, like I can't wait to do this with my class. Like, great, because that's how hard it should be. It should be exciting, it should be interesting, and it should be something that you want to turn around immediately and use. So getting those types of things in the hands of upper grades first, but also I was thinking, you know, we've got a whole bunch of little kids who are just getting their first tablets, right? And they're doing things before they're keyboarding, before they're doing anything. They're swiping, they're clicking, they're tapping. There are so many instinctual users. This is my 21st year, and I'm thinking about what I used to teach kids. When I don't have to teach them now,
So that's my
it's
biggest
a different ballgame.
Yeah,
And so getting those educators who are coming to this now, not that my son is setting necessarily, but it would be really great if those people who have grown up with a cell phone, with those kids who like are texting mom, you know, this is all these things that they're doing as part of their everyday life and used to be, you know, sort of like dream. The things we talk about where the jobs that our kids have in the future have been invented. We have to start presenting that to our teachers in a way that's like, okay, we're not just holding steady here. We need to keep moving forward. And how do we keep that exciting? How do we keep it interesting? And they should feel some sort of immediacy. That's what I like to build in. Yeah, so they feel like it's like, oh yeah, it isn't just housing them. And it isn't just making sure that your test scores, oh god, that should be right. But their tests have changed in the last 8 years. You know, we're not bubbling, you know, playing kids with all the stuff that you need. And so finding a way to do it in a supportive, encouraging environment where, again, if you feel compelled, more often than not, I guess, will you run the lab? Can you run them through the SBAC practice? Like, they're not going to take it with me.
We need to teach them how to fish.
Yeah, exactly. We want you to feel as comfortable with it as the kids do. Or because they can smell, the kids can smell it. They know
Well, and they're
it.
gonna know if they ask you questions, like, someone's gonna have to troubleshoot.
Yes, yes. And having that, like, oh, I got it. Because I already am anticipating what my April is like because it's the phone calls, like, I can't log in. It's like, you know, if you've done this the week before and tried to make sure that it
Goes through,
right,
yeah.
good, that password works. You don't have to give a full statement, just do it. You don't have to, like, if you can show a video, just, you know, 8:15, just click, make sure, okay, go outside, get your kid. But if you call me because it's not working, 2:15,
Panic moment. Yeah.
it's done. You have to build in that, like, it's okay for breaks. You know, like we were talking about the internet goes down when I'm giving a presentation. It's like, okay. There was a time when we weren't doing this with whiteboards. We had chalkboards. We had tractor feed printers. It's okay. We'll get back to that, but you have to build toward we're headed here, and that eventuality is. It's not about what we know; it's what they need to learn. So.
Okay, are we at a nice breaking point now?
I'd like you.
3, 2, 1. Excellent. You guys are having a great conversation up here. I'd love to know what some major takeaways would be. Even if it's like this won't work on my school site, which is totally fine, which is valid. But I think it's important to sort, like, you know, to source some of those ideas and or hesitations.
I'm saying there isn't really a dedicated space. There isn't really any kind of protected space in any of the structures at our school set aside for thinking about tech integration. It's on a ad hoc, like when there's a need, pressing need, then then I'll be called on, or other folks with knowledge will be called on to like kind of fill that need for that time being. But it's not like an ongoing conversation, except for like the couple people that spend a little more time thinking about it. And it's about to say we do have other structures in place that are more around curriculum, PLCs or whatever, that are oriented towards curriculum and student achievement, things like that. And those exist and are pretty stable, and that would be a place where you could start by like housing the work of that PLC in a more digital world, and that would make it easier then probably to integrate, data from platforms or tools that people are using or resources or something, and have it housed more digitally, and that probably would gradually increase the amount of brain space people are willing to devote to tech in their classroom.
So it sounds like people are, it's more reactive than proactive right now. Yeah. We talked a little bit about that up here, especially since SBAC's coming, kind of anticipating the fires we'll be putting out.
Yeah.
You can do it in advance. Did anyone else have you guys had a good conversation up here?
It was interesting. Ours is like with kind of different configurations where including students into the community.
I love that idea.
Yeah, so right now I have 2 student helpers on sort of a part-time basis that are sort of, one signed up, the other one I'm borrowing from another teacher to help with some of the maintenance of some of our Chromebooks. And as other kids are seeing them, they're just like, ooh, I want to learn to do that next year. And I'm like, yeah, we'll see if we can work something out. So I'm hoping that, yeah, exactly, having them. And now they surprised me. I mean, one kid figured out how to totally take all the insights out that were working from one Chromebook and move it to another that had a working screen and put it all back together and make it work. Yeah. So, yeah.
I like that idea. We had a gentleman in San Francisco who also mentioned, he said, my staff's kind of hard-boiled. That's what he said. He said, my staff's kind of hard-boiled, so I think I'm going to work with the students. So he wanted to come up with a student tech squad and basically start a high school AV club to do exactly what you're talking about. So, yeah. Anything else before I move on?
Yeah. We were, because I just had this meeting, and we're changing our focus for school and putting a little more responsibility on the teachers in the classroom. So other than working more with the teachers in the classroom. So we talked the idea of getting them more familiar with the Summer model was like none of them that I talked to had heard of it, but then once they heard about it, they realized that there was some thinking, some conscious thinking that they could do about moving their own skills along if they were going to be moving their complete skills along.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And I guess hopefully pushes them beyond thinking about that substitution aspect, right? That you were mentioning earlier, people are trying to find ways to substitute things in their classroom that's going to both save them time and energy. But yeah, I'm glad that you've introduced that to them. So like I said, the whole idea behind kind of the flow of today is really thinking about how change happens at campus. So the first that we talked about was really convening groups in a community around practices. And the second is really about what the core of those communities are, which are really one-on-one relationships. So I'd love for you, right now we're going to think about our best coaches in our life. Now this can be professionally, this can be athletically, personally, religiously, however you would think of this person. I imagine someone popped up in your mind. I'd love for you to think about what made them great and how they made you feel and how did you grow as a result. And if you can turn and talk to someone different this time, that would be awesome. Or roll your chair, or give them one. And I'll give you 2 minutes to go ahead and discuss. So go ahead and talk to your partner about what made your coach great.
Hi Jason, hi Dave. So who?
Yeah, go ahead.
think I'm checking over
Are you
this.
Who's your coach?
Like a wrestler. Pretty good. Tend to be hesitant kind of personality, so he's a good pusher, not an and he managed to do it without being tricky.
Yeah,
Line
it's
walk,
a
but he was really good at sort of
tough
pushing
road.
out of my comfort zone and doing that patiently. Is
Like,
Yeah.
like, first one was my master. That's my biggest coach.
I can relate to that. I had
Especially like.
a wrestling coach or two. That idea that it's like it's not my nature to hurt somebody. It's like, yeah, but you're not going to hurt them. You kind of do need that idea of being assertive without, like, yeah, you really kind of have to step past that. What am I going to do? Like, what are they going to do if you do this? I mean, they're not just a victim. It's like they're participating with you. And that idea, I think, because I had one real hardcore the guy, like, nobody wanted to work with Mr. Carter. But Coach Gorio, it's like, he was the one who would like sit back and like, yeah, how's that working? It's like little, Dr. Phil sort of like, was it working to just sort of let him roll yours? Like, no, I didn't like it. Okay. So what did you do different? Oh yeah, well, I guess I'm gonna have to do something different. And having that moment of like, it's up to you. It's like I can push, but really, it's like, if you want to be here, then it's like, you should. It's like, yeah, I want to do the wrestling things. Like, oh, okay, well, this is what wrestling is.
I find it.
I see. It's a choice thing. I thought it was a have to. Oh well.
Yeah, it was, yeah. It's a choice thing, and then also,
Like living in the same situation.
like, this is also available.
That would be a little
Yeah.
bit because like you would
Exactly.
like constantly.
Well, he was the one who suggested to me my big thing was like I learned we were taught everything left and right, and most everybody's thinking if you go with your dominant hand, but I taught myself like, this is being like my cool thing is I'm going to learn how to do everything left-handed so that when you come down on the road, the guy's looking up like, we never practiced this. It's like, okay. So that was using that extra little brain cell that I got that made some of the other wrestlers I was working with didn't have. Unfair advantage perhaps. But yeah. And having that sort of like, it looked awful at first, and then
Right. Enough, like, psychological value.
oh no, there's that weird flinch that you can get.
2, 1. Okay, I feel so bad interrupting you because you're having great conversations, but we're about to get into some fun personalities, which is kind of part of the meat of this presentation. But I would just love 2 volunteers to kind of share either what they said or what their partner said, just something that stuck out about their great coach.
So as the only tech person at my site, I usually just bounce my ideas off my principal, and she says, "Yeah, that's great, try it." And then I think in her head she knows that I'm going to fail at something, and she lets me fail, and then she's always there like, "So how did that go?" And then I'll tell her, and then she'll bounce ideas back at me. And so letting me have that freedom to fail and just letting me try it out myself instead of saying, "Oh no, that's not going to work," and letting me have that experience and learning that. So
Yeah, it's a really good coach, someone who kind of unconditionally believes in you, right? That's awesome. Any other good nuggets or stories about their coach? No? We were talking about how a good coach can sometimes too elevate what you think is expected of you or think what's possible in your life. Like they are like, no, you think this is possible, but imagine if, and they kind of open up a whole new world. So that's another great thing. But hopefully at the heart of all the things that you were talking about were people, which is the whole point. I did want to at least plug this a little bit. We have no affiliation with this person or this book, but this is just something that we use a lot with our blended learning coaches and internally as a team too. Elena Aguilar, has anyone ever heard of her or been to any of her trainings here in the Bay Area? So she's kind of the master coach, and we've included her website here. She has a lot of free printables if you need to print off something before an observation, before a one-on-one conversation, before a tough conversation. It's an excellent resource. say about that. And the whole point behind her book, if you can go ahead and read this quote to yourself. And I've bolded this last part because it's really about the relationship. And the word client there might feel a little clunky, but we're talking about our teachers. And what it sounds like what we were talking about before, it sounds like this is what's hardest to change maybe, behaviors, practices, and beliefs, right? So making sure that safe space is there and that people can plug into change. And you might be thinking, but I'm not a coach. I'm a data and tech lead, and I'm also the science teacher, or the librarian, or the robotics coach, and this and that and this. But what we really encourage teachers to think about is themselves as a teacher leader and thinking about how many small coaching moments you can have in the course of a day. And I'd love just for you to sit and think for a few seconds about any small moment you may have had where you coached someone or taught someone something that they didn't know. And if you can think of one, I'll ask you to share one. I'll share one that I had recently. My mom is a special ed teacher in Arizona, and she is close to retiring, but they've just all become Google Classroom schools as well. And I recently taught her how to make a copy of something in Google Classroom. Small little thing, game changer. If previously you were downloading and uploading everything you've ever saved to Google Drive, so taught my mom how to make a copy. That was my little coaching moment. Has anyone had a coaching moment recently at their school site? Even if it's outside of your role as a data and tech lead, that they would be willing to share. Yeah.
I was sitting next to my other principal at our last meeting, and at the end, I looked over. I said, "You need to fix your email inbox." He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "It's just one stream. Let's break it up and make it to where your important star on the side, and you have all these different compartments." And he's like, "Show me." He's like, "Well, here, do it for me." I'm like, "No, I'm not doing that." I'm like, "Open up your settings," and I walked him through it, and within 5 minutes, his inbox was tricked out, and he was just like, "Wow, that's awesome."
And he was excited.
And he learned, so he's like, "How did you do this?" And he's like, "You gotta come in more and show me a little bit extra tools and tricks." I'm like, "Sure." So it felt good that he was able to, make that look nice.
That's awesome. It's also incredible he trusted you to do that.
Yeah, that was what I did for him.
Which is actually the most perfect segue in the world to what the most important thing is in coaching relationships is really about relationships. You have to connect with someone on a human level. And even if you and the person who you're working with or coaching have different attitudes towards what you're doing or different approaches, it's really important to align on a common purpose. Hey, we're all on the same bus going the same direction. Or, oh, hey, we're all here for the students. Or, hey, we're all here to make sure the SBAC is painless as possible. But really aligning on a common purpose and building that strong relationship is the foundation for a great coach. Our coach Kendra says someone needs to know that you care before they care what you know. And I would love to know who sees black and blue. I see black and blue. Does anyone see white and gold? No white and gold in here.
On this computer, I see white and gold.
Oh,
It's like,
that is so true. Yeah. And the whole point of me putting up this up here is really just about perception and the way that we communicate and the way that our words and actions are perceived. Intent versus impact can sometimes be very different. So it's just really all about going into a relationship with a teacher or a peer or an administrator, understanding you're going to be approaching things from different lenses, from different perspectives, and you're going to be bringing your own ideas with you. Okay. Good time. Let's do the brain break. It's fun. All the time working in 27 schools in California. So we find people fall into 3 buckets. These, of course, are not the only buckets in the world. There are other outliers, but we find that when it comes to tech integration, people are either a techspert, a wait-and-seer, or an islander. Now, who are they? So I would love someone in the best acting voice to read out what you might hear a techspert say. Those four lines, those lead-ins. Or can just be in your regular voice, doesn't have to be an acting voice. Anyone? Come on. Thank you, Kylie.
You have to try this new thing. I tried this once and I saw this app once. Oh, have you ever heard of? Excellent, thank you. Let's give her a little round of applause. I thought that was good. Okay, excellent. So tech experts, they are really eager to learn and implement. They are always the people who are the early adopters. They're Google certified immediately. They sometimes have more than one device on them at a time. They have strong opinions about Apple versus Android. They sometimes are the people who are sitting in your seats. They're data and tech leads. These people are excellent. They're really energetic. They are enthusiastic. They're great to get on your side when you're trying to implement change. The cons, sometimes it's tech for tech's sake. How this plays out sometimes is you see a teacher who has kids in her class typing on an online journal in a Google Doc when a paper one would have done just as well. Because there's no collaboration, kids aren't commenting, there's nothing really new going on, they're just typing instead of writing. So sometimes it's just for tech's sake. So our recommendations when you're working with these people is to appreciate their passion. They love kind of being the person who discovers new things. They see themselves as pioneers. So you need to appreciate that energy about them. Second thing, maybe the most important, is to help give direction and focus. So say, hey, you know what, you should try this app for the next quarter and let me know how it goes. And the most important part with these folks is following up after implementation. So making sure that you're learning best practices, so when you're putting together any kind of tech plan or any kind of tech implementation at your site, that you have some other learnings to go and incorporate. Has anyone worked with a tech expert before? Or can anyone think of a tech expert at their site? Kylie, I think, works almost exclusively with tech experts. Yeah. Do these ring true, more or less? Okay. Okay. The wait and seer. We all know these folks, and these are our coaches, Kendra. These are her favorite folks to work with.
I don't know about that.
There we go.
Show me how it's better than what I'm doing. You try it first and then let me know.
Yes. And I also want to pause and let you know that there's no value attached to any of these personalities. They are all important people and they all matter. So one is not better than the other. But yes. So these people, they are a little bit more skeptical. The great thing is they are really experienced. And their skepticism means that they're not going to just implement anything. The cons are they're really hard to win over. But when you win them over, they will be Kendra has this great story where she came into a school and she went and met this teacher named Michaeline, and she said, I think she'd been teaching for around 35 years. Kendra came in and she said, hi Michaeline, I'm Kendra, I'm going to be your blended tech coach. She said, I'm not sure why you're here, I think the principal maybe sent you. Anyways, I already have all the tech I need in my class, you can just sit in the back of the room. I don't know why you're here. So this woman, little by little, Kendra built that really strong relationship with this teacher. And by the end of the year, Michaeline was the one who was testing new strategies, new tools in her classroom. And by the time she kind of had come over to the dark side of tech implementation, she'd find people in the teacher's lounge, she's like, oh my gosh, I just tried this new Kahoot with my kids. And all of a sudden teachers are like, oh my gosh, Michaeline's using Kahoot, maybe I should check it out. Because they know that she has a really high standard for what she used in her classroom. Okay, these folks, these are not your guinea pigs. Do not introduce brand new things to them unless it's proven. You need to be thoughtful about implementation with these folks. It also really helps to scaffold it, because if you have a really bad experience with implementing something new, they're probably not going to want to do it. And the last part is really collecting that honest feedback. Because they're skeptics, sometimes it can be tough to get that honest feedback out of them. So yeah, it was fine, or it didn't work, or it worked. But really building that relationship so they give you a lot of feedback and ask those questions that maybe no one else is going to be comfortable asking is really important. And the last one. We've got three little lead-ins here. I know there's one less actor in this room.
I've been doing this thing in my class. Yeah, I've heard of that. This little trick changed my classroom.
Excellent. So Islanders are doing great work. Their classroom is humming. They're implementing the tools the district has rolled out. They're implementing the curriculum. Their classroom management is on lock. They're doing a great job. The problem is they're working in isolation. They may or may not be sharing what they know outside of their small kind of group of friends and or their grade level team or their PLC. So the pro is there's a great self-starter. They have great ideas. The con is they're a little island. So the idea is to hopefully build out a community around them. Does anyone have anyone like this at their school? Or maybe you're that person? Yeah. Kendra, our coach, she always says, she's like, I used to be an Islander. I'm so embarrassed I was an Islander. And then my principal came and saw my classroom and saw that I was doing what he wanted in, like, he said, why didn't you raise your hand in last week's PD? And she's like, it was a whole group setting. It doesn't make me comfortable. And now she's a blended learning coach. So we recommend with these folks, you need to appreciate their ingenuity. These are the people who are already doing great work and they've been doing it. So appreciate the fact that they've been doing it. The second and most important is that you really need to create opportunities for them to share. And say you're creating a whole new plan for your campus and you're trying out learning management systems or tools or assessment data tools, you really want these people as a thought partner. Because if they're already doing great things, you want to learn from them so that whatever you're incorporating takes that into account. Okay. But to do all of this, you need to work with adults. We're going to do a few minutes on this because hopefully you've seen the pillars of adult learning theory before, which is really about these 5 things. And really, a good adult learning is also just sometimes really good teaching as well. Keep that in mind. But it needs to have a personal benefit. They need to be able to see how impactful it is pretty immediately. We were talking about someone using a Kahoot, and they're like, oh, I can take that and use that immediately. So it needs to be applicable as soon as possible. Some of the best PDs I'm sure you've been to, you left with actual resources in hand, and you could use them immediately. Self-direction, you need to give them options throughout so they can self-differentiate. Their adults are more attuned to their needs than kids are, so they're better at that. Learning styles, hopefully it's not all going to be just PowerPoint or all written or all reading. And this is probably the most important part is that the experiences, the wisdom's in the room when you're talking with adults. So giving opportunities to collaborate, share out experiences, learn from one another, that's probably the most important part. And lastly, include time for people to shine. Make sure that it's actionable. Of all of these things though, I'd say the most important part is when you're working with adults, use those same exact teacher moves that are already in your toolkit. You already know these, you're already experts at them, making sure that you're using them with your PLC members, your grade level members, people in your tech squad, whatever it is, because this is really kind of the most powerful we've seen in terms of PD. Okay, this is actually my favorite part, to make it contagious. So all this stuff is good and well, but if you're doing something great and you're the Islander, it doesn't mean anything unless you actually share it with people. So I would love for you to go to this bit.ly link. It's bit.ly/DTL lowercase share. These are some examples that we have, what we've seen to work across a bunch of different school sites on how you share what you know. I'm going to go through and name some examples of how this is done. Okay, so office hours. We found that this is something that builds slowly, kind of like a crock pot, heats up over time, but then by the end is nice and plumbing. Office hours are excellent. We've had a lot of teachers who are the one person on their campus, and people would run to them and ask them questions. This is broken down, my printer doesn't work. And by redirecting, great, my office hours are every Tuesday and Thursday from 3 to 3:30. Tuesday and Thursday, 3 to 3:30. Whatever it is, setting a designated time for people to come and ask you those questions, all of a sudden it becomes part of their habit and their behavior. And then they come and see you as the person, and they see you on your time, which I think is the most important. To get them there, the second one, is a newsletter. We've linked to some, like Adobe Spark. We've had folks use that. We've had people just send a great email digest, but sending out a newsletter with any tips or tricks is really helpful to get people even to office hours. So we found someone who had office hours are so popular that he had to create a Google form that he'd send out via his newsletter for people to sign up for time slots. That is the ideal, right? You spend 2 hours after school in 15-minute time periods working with a bunch of individual teachers. That is super ideal. And I know you said you wouldn't wish Google Classroom on teachers, but we have found some teachers, if they're having trouble kind of breaking out of their Islander mindset, or say, for example, this has happened at a school site where it was a K through 8 that was adding a grade every year. So the year they added 8th grade, they only had one 8th grade teacher. This woman joined a virtual PLC where she was able to meet with all the other 8th grade teachers in the district so she could share resources and not be totally alone. Okay, lunch and learn. This is just kind of like a brown bag lunch where either you or someone else on your site can share a best practice over lunch, and it's not like putting together a PD. It's a very light lift. It's really just a demonstration of something that's worked. Screencasts. So you don't even have to create these yourself. There's like a bazillion of them on the internet. You can create them yourself, and we've recommended some tools like Screencast-O-Matic and a couple others. But really, if it's something that you're repeating over and over and over and over, especially with SBAC coming up, screencasts are an excellent way to maximize your time and impact and teach people the same skills. And then 15 minutes of fame is something that I've seen at a lot of places I've worked, actually. Instead of putting together a 2-hour PD or one hour PD, it's really about splitting up 1 hour into 4 15 minutes and saying, great, you're doing a mini lesson on that one thing that worked awesome in your class. And that way it takes the load off of you and shines the spotlight on people doing great work. I'll pause there for a second because I need to breathe. The reason why I'm rushing through these is because I want you guys to be able to dig in and actually start thinking about which one you want to use. Okay, the last 3, existing channels. Your school might already have a website, might already be active on Twitter, might already have things that are going out in newsletters. Plugging into those existing channels makes people aware of the work that you're doing. Just like the 15 minutes of fame, 10-minute tech tip in all staff meetings we've seen is a great first step, really great first step of people going from seeing you as the person who fixes tech to seeing you as like a thought partner and a leader. So that's even just even if it's just a logistical staff meeting about testing or logistics for spring break, a 10-minute tech tip at the beginning. Make sure it's really juicy though. So it's like organizing your inbox or something that people keep asking that problem with. Make that the 10-minute tech tip. And lastly is really joining Twitter chats. This is something that some members of our staff are reluctant to do, and now that they've done it, they're like, why didn't I do this sooner? Because now their PLC has grown, to an international group. So, thinking about all of these ideas, I would love for you to think about which strategy you would actually try at your site. And I'd encourage and push you to think about when you will try it. And also, it's totally fine for you to think about starting at the end of summer, beginning of next school year. But think about which of those 9, which of those 9 tactics you might be able to use at your site and what might go over well. Okay. We might actually, I'm going to ask you at the very end to share out which one you might try. But before we do that, I did want to share more resources with you. Because we're almost out of time. But I do want to make sure that you walk away with some useful tips and tools. So in this folder, I've linked a bunch of coaching and one-on-one support resources. And over here, I've linked to some resources on preparing and delivering PD. So feel free to dig in those. We'll spend the remainder of our time with you guys digging around in that. And then at the end of our time, what I'll do is I will just ask you to kind of verbally say, which, it's not going to be written anywhere in stone, but something that piqued your interest that you might try at your school site, whether it's this year or the beginning of next school year.